is your no bullshit guide to a happier life. Quick, but not necessarily easy tips to help you to squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of your business and your life. My name is Helen Calvert. I'm a coach, a business owner and a parent, and I'm so happy to be here with you. I do swear occasionally, as the title suggests, so pop in your headphones if I'm not safe for little ears. Ready to go? Let's do this. Hello and welcome to this episode where we are going to be talking about creativity. This has been a challenging one for me. The reason being that when I do research for these toolkit episodes, if it's a tool that I don't particularly use very much, I try to use it every day for a week so that I am ready to talk to you fully about the experience of using that tool. So me being me, I decided to do something creative every day for a week. And that just brings up the fundamental problem with me and creativity, because I like structure. I like quick tasks. I like things that I can tick off a list. And of course, creativity, well, not of course, because this whole episode is about my discovery of what creativity actually is. But creativity seems to be, in some ways, about being in the moment, being unstructured and free-flowing, and it can take an unspecified amount of time. Well, that doesn't suit me at all. So firstly, I will tell you what I did for my moments of creativity, and then we will look at what some of my friends told me about their creative outlets, which gave me a different perspective. So day one, I created a vegetable stir fry from what was in the fridge, and I put in my own spices, didn't use a recipe, and that's actually quite big for me because, as I say, I'm not confident with things that are not structured. So if I cook something I know well, that's fine because I've done it a million times before. But if I cook something new, I tend to follow a recipe. I want to make sure I'm doing it right. So I just whipped up a stir fry and it was very tasty. And I printed off a map of the United States of America and coloured in the states that I have visited, coloured them in with my lovely pens, my little glittery gel pens. So that felt really good. The next day, I was casting around for something creative and I saw that my boys have an origami set to make origami animals, sea creatures. I took one of them out and very, very quickly got very frustrated with not being able to understand the instructions and had a mini tantrum and just thought, no, you see, creativity isn't for me. It's such a limiting mindset, isn't it? But that's what I thought. So I did some colouring instead. And I love my colouring books, and that definitely helps me to stay in the moment. If I sit and colour, it's one of the few things that actually keeps my brain from swinging up and down my timeline, thinking about the past, getting excited about the future. It actually keeps me in the moment. So that was a good activity. The next day I did what was probably my favourite thing. I drew around my hand on just a piece of white paper, and then I coloured it in sort of patterns. And I might actually put a picture of that on my social media because I'm really pleased with how that came out. So that did bring me joy because I created something that I thought looked beautiful. So that was quite nice. And the next day I wrote a poem, which is not that big a deal for me. I've always written poetry since I was quite small, but it tends to come in fits and bursts. So I don't think of myself as a poet. I certainly think of myself as a writer, but not a poet. But yeah, there have been plenty of times when I've written poems. So that was a fairly easy bit of creativity for me. And I think the next day I just doodled on a pad because I was trying to remember that creativity is just doing a thing. You know, it doesn't have to be, oh, I need an exciting outcome like a completed poem. So it seemed to me that writing, making and drawing, that's what was in my head as being creativity. When people say, I love to express my creativity, that's what I think of. I would have called it crafts when the boys were small. You know, we're going to do some crafts. It was like messy things that require all kinds of patience and an ability to override the desire to clean up, which I could do with the boys because, you know, it was good parenting to do crafts. But to do it for myself, it just feels like, I just can't be bothered with the mess and hassle. But fortunately, I then spoke to some of my friends about creativity. And as I say, I got some very different perspectives, which has opened my eyes to what creativity really is. So some of them did enjoy learning and trying new things. Some of my friends buy online courses in tapestry and jewellery making, making things into a hobby, I guess, getting new hobbies, things to focus on, things to do, things to try. But other people mentioned things that I already think of as part of my toolkit, but I probably wouldn't have labelled as creative. Things like journaling, walking, being out in nature. A couple of people actually mentioned tidying, decluttering, and taking photos, making collages. I love photographs. I take so many photographs. And of course that's creative, but it hadn't occurred to me that it was. And baking and cooking. And as much as I don't really think of myself as much of a cook, I can bake a good cake. I do bake a pretty good chocolate cake. So yes, I enjoy that as well. So it's all about how these activities contribute to a happier life, expressing our creativity in some fashion. How does it contribute to a happier life? Well, one of my friends said that it's about doing a process, not an outcome activity. And initially I thought, oh no, I don't like that. I like outcomes. I like to be able to tick things off the list. But then actually, I love driving and singing and dancing, and I don't expect some kind of outcome from those activities. And one of my friends told me that singing and dancing, just at home or in the car for herself, they're her creative outlets. That was the first thing she thought of when I said about creativity, dancing and singing. And it had never occurred to me that those things were creative. I dance and sing all the time. I dance in the shower, I sing in the car. That's a standard activity for me. So it's interesting that those are creative and they are a process, not outcome driven. What this particular friend said to me was that dancing and singing for her are her ways of purposefully and consciously getting rid of negative energy or any kind of emotion, just kind of getting it out in a healthy and safe way so that she can come back to equilibrium. It's not about having emotions suppressed, but it's about just a really healthy way of dissipating them. So, she puts them into a song, she puts them into a dance, and it just gets them out in a really healthy and, of course, physically active way if we're talking about dancing. And in singing, if we really sing, that can be a physical workout. So for her, it's just the best way of expressing herself, which, of course, is what creativity actually is, self-expression. I had another friend say that being in nature is important to her. As I say, we mentioned walking and being outdoors, feeling relaxed and at peace. And she said, especially by water. That's something that resonates for me hugely, being by a stream or a river or a lake. Again, I would never have thought of that as creativity, but it is self-expression, isn't it? And replenishing, which I was beginning to see was how a lot of people viewed creative outlets, as a way of replenishing themselves. Painting and writing, somebody said it allows her to put things from her head onto paper. So it's an outlet, freeing up capacity in her head. And if we think of creativity as producing something, I was thinking of it as, I need to produce a poem or produce a painting. Actually, what we are producing our thoughts from our head, producing them outwards, if that makes sense. So, of course, it's about outlet and expressing what is inside, bringing it outside. This has been a real journey of discovery for me, as I think you can tell, in terms of what is creativity. And certainly writing for me, writing is a great way of expressing what's in my head. Another friend said that she would draw, and drawing made her feel calm and centered and replenished. So again, it's getting some kind of energy out into something we're producing, a drawing, a piece of writing, a cake, and then feeling replenished. One that I thought was a lovely suggestion, which I think I may do, is arranging flowers, but in terms of buying just cheap bunches of flowers or cheap flowers, picking things out from different places and then arranging them into a beautiful bouquet. That sounds lovely. That sounds like it would create something very aesthetically pleasing. And I love flowers, so that was another great suggestion. One that I loved, which I think you will all appreciate that I enjoyed this one, was that sex is creative. And as soon as someone said that to me, I thought, of course, new ideas, new fantasies, new positions, way to empty your head, way to fill your cup, way to express emotions, but also switch off from all your thoughts. If that's what we're talking about in terms of creative outlets, of course sex is creative. So I'm really keen to hear your thoughts. Is creativity about producing something, potentially something beautiful, definitely something new? Or is it about expressing one's emotions, emptying one's head of thoughts, filling one's cup? Is it both? Is it a mixture? I'd love to hear from you all as to what you think creativity is, what you use it for, what are your creative outlets? It's so interesting to me because I, as I say, defaulted to, it's writing, drawing, colouring in. As I say, I love using my colouring books, and if we're talking about just a way to switch off and express, that probably is one of my favourite creative outlets. But there's so much more to it than that, isn't there? Are there any bullshit elements to creativity? Well, I guess it depends how narrow a definition we want to have. If we have that very narrow definition, then not everyone's going to have the time to sink into learning a new creative skill. Not everyone feels they can draw or paint, although obviously it's not about how talented you are. Not everyone enjoys mess, so if we're talking about producing art or baking cakes, it might not be for everyone, even though a bit of art or writing or baking or whatever every now and again is a great change of pace and a good break for the brain. But if we're talking about expressing our emotions and emptying our heads, I think that's something from which we can all benefit. I don't think there is a bullshit element to that, truly. And of course, doing that doesn't require time or skill or talent. It's just about giving ourselves permission to express ourselves. Which brings us to our mindset block alert for this episode. No matter what creative outlet you choose, you don't need to be able to do it well. And this is a reminder for me as much as a reminder for you. That is not the point, it turns out, of creativity. If you want to produce something aesthetically pleasing, that's fine, of course, but you don't need to be talented to express yourself creatively. It turns out, as I say, that what we're producing is not an end product that can be judged or bought or, that can be successful or can be a failure. What we're producing is what is inside us. We are bringing it out into the world. And we can't possibly do that incorrectly because we're just producing what's in us. Expressing what is inside, it's so important, and we actually have loads of tools at our disposal for achieving that. We've mentioned a few in this podcast. I'm sure you will all be able to think of loads more, just ways of expressing what is inside. And I really believe that that is a key thing about moving towards a happier life. Because things that are kept hidden and suppressed and bottled up, those just lead to unhelpful outbursts that we feel we can't control. Often those things can lead to chronic illness. Nothing that is suppressed inside is going to lead to a healthy outcome. But things that are brought out in whatever way we choose, are put out there into the world in some fashion, that leads to calm and clarity and joy. 3 of my very favourite things. So I started this process thinking, well, I'm not particularly creative. I can write, I enjoy writing, but other than that, I'm not particularly creative. Turns out that's nonsense because I express my emotions in myriad ways all the time like crazy. So that suggests to me that perhaps I am very creative, and I'm sure you are too. So please do let me know, what are your creative outlets, and what are some of the things that it turns out are creative that you didn't even know you were doing creatively. And until next time, be excessively kind to yourself, however you wish to express your emotions, and let's go forth and squeeze every last drop of enjoyment out of life. See you next time. Thank you so much for listening. It's great to have you along for the ride. If you enjoyed the episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave me a review. And don't forget to subscribe so you know when new episodes are up. If you identified a mindset block during the episode and would like to work with me one-to-one, you can find out how in the show notes. See you next time.